In the grand tapestry of the universe, where countless species coexist in a delicate balance of diplomacy, trade, and the occasional interstellar kerfuffle, there exists a particular classification of planets that strikes fear into the hearts or whatever passes for a cardiovascular system of most sentient beings: Deathworlds. These charming vacation spots are known for their inhospitable environments, deadly fauna, and the inexplicably tough creatures that call them home. Earth, unsurprisingly, falls into this category. But hey, one man's death trap is another man's playground, right? Enter Jake Thompson, a human with a penchant for sarcasm sharper than a Zerblaxian tooth knife and a laugh that could wake the dead, which, on some planets, is considered quite rude. Jake found himself aboard the Galactic Confluence Station, a sprawling space habitat where species from across the cosmos gathered to exchange ideas, cultures, and the occasional bout of good-natured violence in the name of sport. Now, Jake wasn't your average human. No, he was what you'd call a fitness enthusiast, which in Earth terms meant he enjoyed torturing himself with heavy objects and running until his lungs screamed for mercy. In space terms, this translated to holy shit, is that thing even alive? But more on that later. Our story begins on what Jake would describe as a Tuesday, though in space, time is more of a suggestion than a rule. He had just finished his morning routine of bench pressing a small shuttle with permission from the owner, of course, when he overheard a conversation that piqued his interest. "Did you hear? The Galactic Sparring Championship is holding open tryouts today," exclaimed a gelatinous blob with eye stalks to its equally amorphous friend. "Oh yes," replied the friend, its voice sounding like a kazoo being played underwater. "I heard they're even allowing Deathworlders to participate this year. Not that any would be foolish enough to try." Jake's ears perked up at this. A grin spread across his face, the kind of grin that usually preceded either a brilliant idea or a catastrophic disaster. In Jake's case, these were often one and the same. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Gelatinous beings, Jake interjected, his voice a mixture of politeness and barely contained excitement. "Did I hear correctly that there are sparring tryouts today, open to all species?" The blobs turned to face him, their eye stalks wobbling comically. "Why, yes," said the first blob, its voice tinged with surprise. "But surely a Deathworlder like yourself wouldn't be interested in such a thing. It's mostly for, well, species less likely to accidentally obliterate their opponents." Jake's grin widened. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. I'm always up for a friendly bout of, what did you call it?" "Sparring," he said the word as if it were a quaint, foreign concept, like doily or tax return. The blobs exchanged a look that could only be described as gelatinous concern. "Well," said the second blob hesitantly, "if you're sure. The tryouts are being held in the Grand Arena on level 42. But don't say we didn't warn you. The reigning champion is a Chronax from the low-gravity moons of Zeta 9. They're known for their lightning-fast reflexes and ability to manipulate spatial dimensions." Jake nodded, pretending to look impressed while mentally comparing this description to his last game of whack-a-mole at a county fair. "Sounds like a real challenge. I can't wait to meet this champion. Thanks for the info, fellas." As Jake sauntered off towards the arena, the blobs watched him go with a mixture of awe and pity. "Poor bastard," one blob gurgled to the other. "He has no idea what he's in for." Oh, if only they knew. The Grand Arena was a sight to behold, a massive circular structure that could easily fit several Earth stadiums inside it. The walls were lined with seats occupied by beings of all shapes, sizes, and states of matter. Some floated, some oozed, and some seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. In the center was a large, raised platform that shimmered with a faint blue glow, the sparring arena itself. Jake made his way to the registration desk, where a hurried-looking alien with too many arms and not enough patience was processing applicants. The alien looked up as Jake approached, all 6 of its eyes blinking in rapid succession. "Species?" it asked in a bored tone. "Human," Jake replied cheerfully. The alien's bored expression quickly morphed into one of shock, then fear, then resignation. "Human, as in, from Earth?" "The Deathworld." Jake nodded, his grin never faltering. "The one and only." "Well, not the only human, obviously. There are billions of us. But I'm the only one here, as far as I know. Unless you've got another one hiding under the desk." The alien ignored Jake's attempt at humor, its many hands flying over a complex series of holographic displays. I'm not sure we can allow this. The insurance premiums alone would be astronomical." Jake leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Come on, buddy. Didn't you hear? It's open to all species this year. Are you really going to discriminate against me just because I come from a planet that occasionally tries to kill its inhabitants? That's not very inclusive of you." The alien sputtered, clearly torn between its bureaucratic duty and its survival instinct. Finally, with a resigned sigh that seemed to come from all of its orifices at once, it stamped Jake's application. "Fine, but if you liquefy anyone, it's on you." Jake's eyes lit up. "Wait, liquefaction is an option. This is going to be way more fun than I thought." Before the alien could respond, Jake bounded off towards the preparation area, leaving behind a very confused and slightly terrified registrar. In the preparation area, Jake found himself surrounded by a menagerie of alien athletes, each more bizarre than the last. There was a being made entirely of crystal that seemed to refract light in impossible ways. Next to it stood, if you could call it standing, a creature that looked like a sentient cloud of gas, occasionally forming appendages only to dissolve them moments later. In the corner, a group of what appeared to be sentient plants were performing some kind of photosynthetic warm-up routine. As Jake began his own stretches, he couldn't help but notice the stares he was attracting. Some were curious, some fearful, and some looked at him the way a particularly ambitious hors d'oeuvre might look at a main course. A lithe, serpentine creature with iridescent scales slithered up to Jake, its forked tongue flicking out to taste the air around him. "I've never seen a Deathworlder up close before," it hissed, its voice a mixture of fear and fascination. "Is it true that you can regrow lost limbs?" Jake paused mid-stretch, his expression a perfect blend of amusement and confusion. "Regrow limbs? Nah, you're thinking of Starfish, or maybe Deadpool. I'm just a regular old human. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Though I did grow a pretty impressive beard once. Does that count?" The serpentine alien looked perplexed. But you're from a Deathworld. Surely you must have some extraordinary abilities. Acid blood, retractable claws, the power to manipulate gravity with your mind." Jake couldn't help but laugh, a sound that caused several nearby aliens to flinch. "Sorry to disappoint, but the most extraordinary thing about me is my ability to eat an entire pizza in one sitting. Oh, and I can touch my tongue to my nose. Want to see?" Before the alien could respond or slither away in disappointment, a booming voice echoed the preparation area. "Attention, contestants. The tryouts will begin shortly. Please make your way to the arena floor." As the assembled aliens began to file out, Jake noticed a commotion near the exit. A hulking figure, easily 3 times his size, was making its way through the crowd. Aliens parted before it like the Red Sea before Moses. If Moses had been a 10-foot-tall, 4-armed behemoth with skin like polished obsidian. Jake heard someone nearby whisper, "That's the champion, the Kronax from Zeta 9. Jake watched as the Kronax strode confidently towards the arena, its massive frame rippling with muscles that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As it passed Jake, it paused, looking down at him with 4 glowing eyes that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "A Deathworlder," the Kronax rumbled, its voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "How quaint. I look forward to testing your species' legendary resilience." Jake, never one to back down from a challenge or an opportunity to make a fool of himself, looked up at the towering alien with a smirk. "Well, big guy, I hope you're ready for a surprise. We humans are full of them. Did you know we can lick our elbows? Well, some of us can. I can't personally, but I knew a guy in college who..." The Kronax, clearly not used to being addressed so casually or rambled at about elbow licking, merely grunted and continued on its way, leaving Jake to trail behind, still chattering about various useless human tricks. As they entered the arena proper, Jake's eyes widened. The place was packed, with beings of all descriptions filling the seats, creating a cacophony of cheers, whistles, and various alien noises that defied description. The sparring platform in the center glowed with an eerie blue light, surrounded by what appeared to be some kind of energy field. An announcer's voice boomed across the arena, speaking in a language that seemed to shift and change even as Jake listened. Thanks to the universal translator all visitors to the station were required to wear. He understood every word. "Welcome, sentients of all species, to the Galactic Sparring Championship tryouts. Today we have a diverse group of contestants, each hoping to prove their worth and earn a spot in the upcoming tournament. And in an unprecedented turn of events, we even have a Deathworlder among us." A hush fell over the crowd, followed by a wave of excited murmurs. Jake could feel thousands of eyes and other sensory organs turned towards him. He responded in typical human fashion, by waving awkwardly and trying not to trip over his own feet. Now the announcer continued, "Let's begin with our first match, with Zixnax of the Photon Collective." And there was a pause, followed by the sound of someone clearing their throat or whatever passed for a throat in their species. "Jake Thompson of Earth, please step onto the platform." Jake made his way to the platform, acutely aware of the mix of curiosity and trepidation emanating from the crowd. His opponent, Zixnax, was already there, a being that seemed to be made entirely of light, constantly shifting and reforming. As Jake stepped onto the platform, he felt a slight tingle as he passed through the energy field. The announcer's voice rang out again. "Contestants, remember the rules. The match ends when one participant yields or is rendered unable to continue. No permanent damage is allowed. May the best sentient win." Jake turned to face his opponent, offering a friendly smile. "So, do we shake hands or?" Zixnax flickered in what might have been confusion or amusement. "I do not possess hands in the traditional sense, Deathworlder, but I appreciate the gesture. May our contest be illuminating." Before Jake could respond with a witty quip about light-based puns, a loud buzz signaled the start of the match. And that's when things got interesting. Zixnax immediately burst into a dazzling display of light, spreading out to fill the entire platform. Jake found himself surrounded by a whirling maelstrom of colors and patterns, each more disorienting than the last. It was like being trapped inside a kaleidoscope designed by a madman with a vendetta against the human visual cortex. While Jake muttered to himself, squinting against the assault of light, "This is a bright idea." He could hear the crowd gasping and cheering, clearly impressed by Zixnax's display. But Jake hadn't come this far to be outdone by a sentient disco ball, drawing on years of experience, dealing with Earth's own blend of sensory overload, namely Times Square at New Year's. Jake closed his eyes and focused on his other senses. He could hear the subtle shifts in the air as Zixnax moved, feel the changes in temperature, as the light being concentrated its energy. With a grin that would have made a cat eyeing a canary proud, Jake waited for just the right moment. There a slight increase in heat to his left. Jake spun, his eyes still closed, and launched into a move that would have made any professional wrestler proud. He leapt, arms outstretched, aiming to grapple with. Well, light. To everyone's surprise, especially Jake's, it worked, sort of. As his arms closed around where he estimated Zixnax to be, Jake felt a strange sensation, like plunging his hands into warm jelly. The light being, clearly not expecting a Deathworlder to simply grab it, let out a sound like a startled Terraman. The crowd went wild. The announcer was shouting something about unprecedented tactics, and is that even legal? But Jake was too busy trying not to let go of his rather slippery opponent. Zixnax, to its credit, rallied quickly. It began to pulse and vibrate, heating up to temperatures that would have scorched most beings. But Jake, with the heat tolerance of someone who had survived Texas summers and New York subway platforms, held on. "Come on, spark plug," Jake grunted, his eyes still squeezed shut against the blinding light. "Let's see who burns out first." What followed was a bizarre dance of light and determination. Zixnax twisted and pulsed, trying to shake off the persistent human. Jake, for his part, looked like he was attempting to wrestle a sentient aurora borealis, all while grinning like a maniac. The crowd was going absolutely berserk. Aliens of all descriptions were on their feet or equivalent appendages, cheering, booing, or making sounds that defied description. Some were even placing bets, with the odds shifting wildly with each passing second. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, Zixnax's light began to dim. Its pulsing slowed, and Jake felt the being's form becoming more solid in his grasp. "A yield," came a voice like tinkling crystal. "Never, never in all my cycles have I encountered such tenacity." Jake opened his eyes, blinking away the afterimages, to find himself holding what looked like a vaguely humanoid shape made of softly glowing light. He gently set Zixnax down, patting it on what he hoped was its shoulder. "Good match," Jake said, his voice a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "You really lit up my life there for a minute." The energy field around the platform dropped, and the arena erupted into chaos. Aliens were shouting, gesticulating, and in some cases oozing excitedly. The announcer was trying to restore order, but their voice was lost in the din. As Jake made his way back to the preparation area, he was swarmed by curious contestants and officials. Questions flew at him from all directions. How did you withstand such temperatures? Is it true that all humans can grab pure energy? Are you some kind of specially bred warrior? Do you need medical attention? Your skin appears to be leaking. Jake, realizing he was drenched in sweat much to the horror of some of the more desiccation-prone species, just laughed. "Nah, I'm fine. This is just how humans cool off. Think of it as a built-in air conditioning system. As for the rest, well, let's just say we're full of surprises." As Jake basked in the aftermath of his unexpected victory, he couldn't help but notice the mix of awe and terror on the faces or face-adjacent appendages of those around him. It was a look he was becoming increasingly familiar with. The "oh crap, the Deathworlder is actually competent" look. He had to admit, it was growing on him. All right, Jake said, trying to calm the frenzy around him, one at a time. "Yes, I can grab energy beings. No, it's not a special power. I just did it. And no, I don't need medical attention. This is just sweat. It's perfectly normal for humans, though I could use a towel if anyone's got one handy." A nearby official, a being that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a filing cabinet, cautiously approached Jake with what appeared to be a sheet of highly absorbent material. "Here, Deathworlder, please. Contain your bodily fluids. Some of our contestants find them quite disturbing." Jake accepted the towel with a grin. "Thanks, buddy. And please, call me Jake. Deathworlder sounds so formal, like I'm here to audit the galaxy or something." As Jake mopped himself off, he couldn't help but overhear the whispered conversations around him. Words like impossible, unprecedented, and absolutely bonkers floated through the air. He was pretty sure that last one was a direct translation from whatever language the gelatinous blob in the corner was speaking. Suddenly, the crowd parted, and a familiar hulking figure approached. The Kronax champion, its obsidian skin gleaming under the arena lights, stood before Jake. All four of its arms crossed in what Jake assumed was a universal gesture of "I'm not impressed, but I'm trying really hard to look like I'm not worried." "Impressive display," Human the Kronax rumbled, its voice somehow managing to sound both condescending and slightly uncertain. But do not let one victory against a being of light go to your head. The true test awaits. Jake, never one to back down from a challenge or an opportunity to make terrible puns, grinned up at the towering alien. Well, big guy, I guess you could say I've seen the light. But don't worry, I've got plenty of fight left in me. Though I have to ask, with 4 arms, do you ever get tired of people asking you to lend them a hand? Or 2? The Cronax's glowing eyes pulsed in what might have been confusion, irritation, or possibly indigestion. It was hard to tell with alien facial expressions. Your species' reliance on wordplay is perplexing. But it will not save you in the arena. Before Jake could respond with another quip, he had at least 3 more hand-related puns lined up. The announcer's voice boomed through the preparation area. Attention contestants. Due to the unexpected outcome of the previous match, we will be making some adjustments to the tournament structure. All remaining participants, please report to the main arena for an important announcement. Jake raised an eyebrow. Adjustments. Well, that doesn't sound ominous at all. Shall we, Mr. Forearms, ladies, gentlemen, and assorted stellar beings, after you? As the motley crew of contestants made their way back to the arena, Jake couldn't help but notice the way the other aliens gave him a wide berth. It was as if they expected him to suddenly burst into flames or start secreting acid. Little did they know he only did that on special occasions. The main arena was abuzz with excitement. The stands were now even more packed, if that was possible, with beings of all descriptions clamoring for a better view. Jake could swear he saw a few holding signs with hastily scrawled messages like "Go Deathworlder" and "Humans for the win." He wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or slightly concerned about his newfound fan club. As they gathered on the arena floor, Jake found himself standing next to a being that looked like a sentient cloud of sparkles. It kept shifting and reforming, occasionally taking shapes that made Jake's eyes water trying to follow. "Tis," the cloud whispered. "If a cloud of sparkles could whisper, is it true what they say about Deathworlders, that you can survive in the vacuum of space by holding your breath?" Jake blinked, trying to focus on what he assumed was the being's face. Not exactly. We can survive in vacuum for a short time, but it's not recommended. Kind of like eating gas station sushi. You might survive, but you'll regret it later." The sparkle cloud pulsed in what Jake hoped was understanding and not the prelude to some kind of cosmic glitter bomb. Before their conversation could continue, the announcer's voice rang out, somehow managing to sound both excited and slightly terrified. "Esteemed contestants and honored spectators, in light of recent developments, the Galactic Sparring Championship Committee has decided to implement a new format for this year's tournament. Instead of individual matches, we will now have a battle royale." A collective gasp went up from the assembled aliens. Jake, for his part, just looked confused. Quick question," he called out, raising his hand like a student in class. "When you say battle royale, do you mean like the movie, or more like that game where everyone jumps out of a flying bus? Because I've got to tell you, my building skills are a bit rusty." The announcer, clearly not expecting questions or Earth pop culture references, sputtered for a moment before continuing. No human. It means all contestants will compete simultaneously in a grand melee. The last being standing will be declared the champion. Another wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Jake could hear a mix of excitement, fear, and what sounded like someone trying to calculate the insurance premiums for such an event. Now the announcer continued, "To accommodate this new format, we have prepared a special arena. Behold." With a dramatic flourish that would have made any game show host proud, the announcer waved their appendage. Jake wasn't quite sure if it was an arm, a tentacle, or possibly a specialized nostril. The floor of the arena began to shimmer and shift, transforming before their eyes. What had once been a simple circular platform was now a complex landscape of obstacles, barriers, and what appeared to be some kind of alien jungle gym. Holographic projectors sprang to life, creating illusory hazards and cover. In the center, a swirling vortex of energy pulsed ominously. "Contestants, take your positions around the arena. When the signal sounds, the battle royale will begin. Remember, the goal is to incapacitate or force your opponents to yield. No permanent damage, no death blows, and absolutely no antimatter weapons. We're looking at you." Shrixie from the Void Nebula, a sheepish-looking being made entirely of dark energy, shuffled its feet, or what passed for feet, and tried to look innocent. As Jake took his position, he found himself wedged between the Cronax champion and what appeared to be a sentient colony of moss. The Cronax glowered down at him, all 4 of its fists clenched. Prepared to be humbled, Deathworlder, it growled. Jake, never one to miss an opportunity for a bit of pre-battle banter, grinned up at the hulking alien. "Humbled? Sorry, big guy, but I left my humility in my other pants. You know, the ones without the interdimensional pockets." Before the Cronax could respond, probably with something menacing and significantly less witty, a piercing tone rang out across the arena. The battle royale had begun. Chaos erupted almost instantly. The sparkle cloud Jake had been chatting with earlier suddenly expanded, engulfing 3 nearby contestants in a dazzling nebula of confusion. The sentient moss colony began rapidly growing. threatening to overtake a section of the arena. And the Kronax. Well, it lived up to its reputation. With a roar that sounded like a freight train having an argument with a volcano, the Kronax leapt into action. Its four arms became a blur of motion, swatting aside opponents, as if they were particularly annoying flies. Aliens went flying in all directions, some literally in the case of a few anti-gravity species. Jake, realizing that standing still was a quick ticket to becoming a human pancake, dove into the fray. He weaved and dodged, using the bizarre terrain to his advantage. Years of parkour, and, if he was being honest, running away from angry landlords had honed his agility to a fine point. As he vaulted over a writhing mass of tentacles that might have been one contestant or possibly a very confused group of them, Jake found himself face to face or face to whatever with the energy being from the Void Nebula. "Ah, hello there," Jake said, dodging a swipe from a tendril of dark energy. "Srixie, was it? Love what you've done with your, existence. Very void cheek." Srixie pulsed menacingly, its form rippling with barely contained power. "Your attempts at humor will not save you, flesh being. Prepare to be consumed by the endless void." Jake raised an eyebrow. "I'm pretty sure that counts as a death blow. Didn't you hear the announcer? No antimatter weapons, remember?" Srixie paused, its dark form flickering in what Jake hoped was embarrassment, and not the prelude to cosmic annihilation. "I may have gotten carried away. Force of habit, you understand." "No worries," pal Jake said, patting the energy being on what he hoped was its shoulder and not some kind of interdimensional orifice. "How about we call it a draw, and you go bother someone else? Maybe that crystal guy over there. I bet he'd look great with some void highlights." Srixie, seemingly relieved at the out, quickly flowed away, leaving Jake to wonder if he'd just talked his way out of oblivion or if the being had simply remembered it left the stove on in another dimension. No time to ponder the mysteries of void etiquette, though. The battle was still raging around him, and Jake was determined to show these aliens what a Deathworlder could do. He sprinted across the arena, leaping over fallen contestants and ducking under flying debris. At one point, he found himself riding atop a rolling sphere of protoplasm, using it like some kind of alien hamster ball to bowl over a group of plant-based lifeforms. "Strike," Jake yelled as he dismounted, giving the protoplasm a friendly pat. "Thanks for the lift, buddy. Hope I didn't mess up your cytoplasm too much." The sphere gurgled something that might have been gratitude or possibly indigestion before oozing away to continue its own battle. As Jake surveyed the chaos around him, he realized that the number of active contestants was dwindling rapidly. The Kronax was still going strong, its four arms a whirlwind of destruction. The sparkle cloud had coalesced into a dazzling tornado, sucking up smaller opponents and spitting them out in a shower of cosmic glitter. And then there was the moss. Oh boy, the moss. What had started as a small, unassuming colony had now grown to cover nearly a quarter of the arena. It moved with surprising speed for a plant, tendrils lashing out to ensnare unwary opponents. Jake watched as it absorbed a crystalline being, the poor alien screams of protest quickly muffled by a layer of vibrant green. "Well," Jake muttered to himself, "I guess that's one way to get your fiber intake." Realizing that the moss posed a significant threat, Jake decided it was time for some creative problem solving. He sprinted towards the center of the arena, where the swirling vortex of energy still pulsed ominously. "Hey, Sparkles," he yelled, waving his arms at the glittering tornado. "Bet you can't catch me." The sparkle cloud, apparently taking offense at being called Sparkles, immediately changed course, barreling towards Jake with the fury of 1,000 disco balls. Jake waited until the last possible moment before diving out of the way. The sparkle tornado, unable to change direction quickly enough, plowed straight into the energy vortex. The resulting explosion was spectacular. A blast of energy and glitter erupted from the center of the arena, momentarily blinding everyone. When the light faded and the cosmic dust settled, Jake found himself standing in a crater of swirling energy and twinkling debris. The sparkle cloud was nowhere to be seen, though the air around him sparkled suspiciously. "Oops," Jake said, brushing glitter off his shoulders. "I hope that wasn't permanent. I'd hate to be responsible for turning someone into the galaxy's largest disco ball." His moment of victory or possibly war crime, depending on how you looked at it, was short-lived, however. A shadow fell over him, and Jake turned to find himself face to chest with the Kronax champion. "Impressive." Deathworlder, the hulking alien, rumbled, its four eyes glowing with a mixture of respect and anticipation. "But now it is just you and me. And I do not intend to lose to a soft-skinned mammal from a backwater planet." Jake looked up at the Kronax, then around at the devastated arena. The moss had retreated, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor when faced with exploding energy vortexes. The remaining contestants were either unconscious, trapped in various states of matter, or had simply decided that today wasn't their day and were trying to sneak out without anyone noticing. "Well, big guy," Jake said, cracking his knuckles and grinning like a man who had either lost his mind or found it in the chaos. "I guess it's just you and me. 4 arms against 2. Obsidian skin versus, well, whatever you want to call this pasty human hide. Shall we dance?" The Chronax's response was a roar that shook the very foundations of the arena. It charged at Jake, all four arms swinging in a coordinated assault that would have turned most beings into a fine paste. But Jake wasn't most beings, he was a Deathworlder. And more importantly, he was a Deathworlder with a plan, or at least the vague outline of a plan, which in Jake's experience was often more than enough. As the Chronax bore down on him, Jake did the last thing anyone expected. He didn't dodge. He didn't try to block. Instead, he spread his arms wide and yelled at the top of his lungs. "Come on, big guy, bring it in. It's hug time." The Chronax, clearly not expecting this response, faltered for just a moment, but a moment was all Jake needed. As the alien's momentum carried it forward, Jake stepped in close, wrapping his arms around the Chronax's midsection in what could only be described as the most aggressive bear hug in galactic history. What are you doing?" the Chronax sputtered, its four arms flailing in confusion. Jake, his face pressed against the alien's obsidian chest, grinned. "Winning," he grunted. And then he squeezed. Now, it's important to understand that while the Chronax was immensely strong, it was used to fighting at a distance, using its long arms to keep opponents at bay. It wasn't prepared for close-quarters combat, especially not with a being from a high-gravity world who had spent years perfecting the art of the bear hug. Jake squeezed with all his might, muscles straining, face turning an alarming shade of red. The Chronax's eyes widened in shock as it felt its rock-hard exoskeleton begin to creak under the pressure. "Impossible," it gasped, its voice strained. "No soft-bodied creature should be this strong." Jake, running out of air but not determination, managed to wheeze out a reply. "Never underestimate the power of a good hug." With a final Herculean effort, Jake lifted the Chronax off its feet. For a moment they stood there, a tableau of absurdity. A human lifting an alien 3 times his size in what looked like the world's most awkward embrace. And then, with a sound like a giant rubber band snapping, the Chronax's exoskeleton gave way. Not enough to cause serious damage, but enough to make the alien yelp in a very undignified manner. "I yield," the Chronax shouted, its voice a mixture of pain, shock, and what sounded suspiciously like embarrassment. "I yield to the Deathworlder." Jake, his face still an alarming shade of red from the effort, slowly released his grip and staggered back. He gulped in air like a man who just discovered breathing was going out of style. "Whew," he gasped, bent over with his hands on his knees. "That was intense." "You okay there, big guy? I didn't squeeze anything important, did I? I'd hate to be responsible for an interstellar incident just because I got a little huggy." The Chronax, still looking shell-shocked, gingerly prodded its midsection. I am unharmed." "Mostly. My pride, however, may never recover," it fixed Jake with all 4 of its glowing eyes. How did you defeat me with such a primitive technique?" Jake, having finally caught his breath, straightened up with a grin. "Well, my 4-armed friend, there's an old saying on Earth, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. In my case, when all you have is a really good hug, every problem looks like it needs a squeeze." The arena, which had fallen silent during their final confrontation, suddenly erupted into chaos. Cheers, boos, and sounds that defied description filled the air. Credits changed hands as bets were settled. Several beings appeared to be having existential crises on the spot, their worldviews shattered by the sight of a squishy mammal defeating the reigning champion. The announcer's voice, sounding both excited and slightly hysterical, boomed across the arena. "Unbelievable. Unprecedented. Absolutely bonkers. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sentients, we have a winner. The new galactic sparring champion is Jake Thompson of Earth." Jake, still a bit wobbly from his exertions, raised his arms in victory. "Woo, that's right, folks. Earth represent. We came, we saw, we hugged." As the crowd's reaction oscillated between wild cheering and confused muttering, a small army of officials swarmed onto the arena floor. Some rushed to check on the fallen contestants and possibly scrape up what was left of them, while others approached Jake with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The head official, a being that looked like a cross between a peacock and a filing cabinet, cautiously extended what Jake hoped was a congratulatory appendage. "Congratulations, Champion Thompson. Your unorthodox tactics have certainly made an impression on the galactic sparring community." Jake shook the offered appendage, trying not to wince as it undulated in his grip. "Thanks. Always happy to shake things up a bit, or squeeze them, as the case may be." The official nodded, its feathers ruffling in what might have been amusement or possibly an allergic reaction to human sweat. "Indeed. Now, as the new champion, you are entitled to a number of prizes and accolades. However, before we proceed with the award ceremony, there is one small matter we need to discuss." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh, let me guess you need me to fill out some paperwork. Sign a waiver absolving the tournament of responsibility for any glitter-related injuries." The official's feathers flattened, and its voice took on a more serious tone. "Not exactly. You see, Champion Thompson, your victory has caused quite a stir among the galactic community. Several species are already filing official protests, claiming that your hugging technique constitutes cruel and unusual punishment." Jake blinked. "Cruel and unusual? It was a hug. Okay, maybe a really enthusiastic hug, but still." The official held up a placating appendage. "We understand. However, you must realize that for many species the idea of such close physical contact is distressing, not to mention the potential for accidental crushing." Jake opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again as he remembered the sound of the Chronax's exoskeleton creaking. "Okay, fair point. So what does this mean? What do I have to give back the title? Because I've got to tell you, I was really looking forward to getting one of those big shiny belts. They look great with jeans." The official's feathers ruffled in what Jake was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of a laugh. "No, your victory stands. However, we would like to propose a compromise. We believe your unique abilities could be put to better use in a different capacity." Jake's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What kind of capacity are we talking about here? Because if this is leading up to some kind of Deathworlders are only good for manual labor thing, I'm going to have to respectfully decline and possibly hug someone." The official's feathers flattened in alarm. "Nothing of the sort, I assure you. No, what we are proposing is, well, perhaps it would be best if I show you." With a flourish of its feathered appendages, the official produced a holographic display. It flickered to life, showing images of various alien species engaged in what looked like very careful, very awkward attempts at physical contact. "You see, Champion Thompson, your display today has made us realize something. Many species in the galaxy have little to no experience with physical affection. Some fear it, others simply don't understand it. But after witnessing the effectiveness of your technique, we believe there may be a demand for instruction in the art of hugging." Jake stared at the official, then at the holographic display, then back at the official. A slow grin spread across his face. Are you asking me to become some kind of intergalactic hugging instructor?" The official's feathers ruffled in embarrassment. "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds rather silly. But yes, essentially. We believe that promoting positive physical contact could lead to better intergalactic relations, fewer misunderstandings, and possibly a reduction in space road rage incidents." Jake couldn't help it. He burst out laughing, not a mocking laugh, but the kind of laugh that comes when the universe decides to hit you with something so absurd, so beautifully ridiculous, that you can't help but appreciate the cosmic joke. "Oh man," he wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. "When I woke up this morning, I did not expect to become the galaxy's premier hugging expert. But you know what? I'm in. Let's spread the love across the cosmos." The official's feathers puffed up in what Jake assumed was relief and excitement. "Excellent. We'll begin making arrangements immediately. Of course, there will be some challenges. We'll need to develop safety protocols, strength testing equipment, and possibly some kind of universal hug consent form." As the official rattled on about logistics, Jake's gaze wandered back to the arena. The Chronax champion was still there, looking somewhat lost and confused. Without really thinking about it, Jake wandered over. "Hey, big guy," he said, patting one of the Chronax's lower arms. "No hard feelings, right? You put up a hell of a fight." The Chronax looked down at Jake, its glowing eyes unreadable. For a moment, Jake wondered if he'd made a mistake. Then, to his surprise, the alien's rigid features softened into what might have been a smile. "No hard feelings, Deathward Jake," it rumbled. "You fought with honor and creativity. I look forward to seeing how your hugging changes the galaxy." Jake grinned. "Thanks, pal. Hey, want to be my first student? I think with those 4 arms, you could revolutionize the group hug scene." The Chronax's eyes widened in alarm, but there was a hint of curiosity there too. "I will consider it. Perhaps after my exoskeleton fully recovers." As Jake turned back to the officials, ready to embark on his new career as the galaxy's foremost authority on interspecies cuddling, he couldn't help but shake his head in amazement. Who would have thought that humanity's greatest contribution to the galactic community would be the power of a good hug? But then again, maybe that's exactly what the universe needed. A reminder that sometimes the simplest gestures can bridge the greatest distances. And so, as Jake prepared to teach the cosmos the fine art of the embrace, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Watch out, galaxy. The age of the Deathworld bear hug is about to begin." Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, unbeknownst to Jake, a cosmic entity chuckled. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all, and it was about to get a whole lot cuddlier.